Hey, all you rad dads out there.
Alex, thanks for stopping by the Rad Dads Show. I'm going to start the way we always do with every episode, and that's by asking you, who are you?
My name's Alex Goldfarb. I sing and I play bass in Debt Neglector. And based on context clues, apparently I'm a rad dad.
Well, that's good. Okay, you answered the first question already.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's great to have you here. We had your bandmate Matt on the show a couple years ago when the last album, Dirty Water, was coming out, and so I'm stoked to have you here. We'll talk about your new record that's coming out this week, but we're here to talk about dad stuff too. So you said it already. You're a rad dad. So take me through that. Like to you, do you think you're a rad dad, and what do you think a rad dad is?
I'm actually wildly insecure about being a dad. It's something that like I really take very seriously, and I really, really want to do a good job. And because of that, I'm just like, anytime I make a mistake, I'm like hyper critical of myself. Um, and which, probably isn't the best thing. And like my wife tries to convince me a lot of times. She's like, "You're doing awesome. Like, relax, But yeah, like I said, I take it really seriously. There's a song on the new record called "Tough Luck Kid," right?
Yeah.
And it's about, I've had anxiety and depression my whole life, right? So the idea of having a kid and potentially passing that stuff on to him really kind of freaked me out. But then again, I really wanted to have a child, right? So like it's me sort of struggling with my insecurities as a dad and like sort of trying to figure things out. Talks about being critical of myself and talks about like, was this a selfish thing that I did? Like, did I do this for me? But like, I'm not going to be equipped to raise this kid because of my anxiety and depression and like, other things that I could like pass on to him. And, so yeah, I think I'm trying really hard to be the raddest dad I can be, I guess. Um, and yeah, I try to be really present. I try to spend so much time with them, I try to be really patient. I used to be a teacher for a
Okay.
long time, and my wife is still a teacher, and so we're very structured. We know how to deal with the behaviors, and we've got our son's a little bit wild. We got a hard one, I believe. I know a lot of people who have like very easy kids who are just like, oh, they're just so chill. I can bring them anywhere and blah blah blah. And oh, he skipped his nap today, and that's fine. Like my kid needs like the structure, 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 schedule, schedule, schedule. And when you see him getting off his schedule, you pay for it, right? Like his behavior, the tantrums, like all that stuff is happening. And and you don't just pay for it that day. It's like, it feels like the
Oh
next
yeah.
2 days are kind of out of whack. You know what I mean? And part of me, like, I literally had this thought the other day. I was like, I wonder if this is like his anxiety. Like he does not know what's coming next because he's off his schedule. And that's how this is manifesting in him. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's a whole thing.
Yeah. And so okay, so you have one child, right?
I have one, Henry. He's two. He'll be
Okay.
3 in June. So yeah, we he started his terrible twos at 1. He was like a real colicky baby too. So it was
Oh,
like,
okay.
man, it's been a wild ride. And but he's awesome. And like every week, every month, like it's just seeing him learn new words, new things, like being able to express himself, seeing his personality develop. Like it is the absolute coolest thing like I've, ever been a part of. You know what I mean? Like, oh, we're seeing his personality now.
Yeah.
Like he's got a sense of humor. Like he's sassy, he's goofy,
That's so
um,
cool, right? Like
yeah,
that's the best.
right,
Is seeing your kids' personality develop. Like, whether it's like because of you or despite you, like,
right, right, right,
like they just kind of somehow become their own person. Like, where does that come from,
right.
right?
Well, it's like we learn how to be from our parents or the people around us, right? And whether that's learning how to follow a good example or how to stay away from a bad example, like I think that, yeah, that's how we grow up and learn how to interact with the world, right?
Yeah. And so you kind of mentioned like yeah, I'm maybe reading into your comment a little bit about like you kind of qualified when I was like, okay, so you call yourself a rad dad. You kind of qualified it. You're like, well, I'm
Mm,
not sure. You
right.
talked about some of your insecurities around that, and yeah, it certainly has, come out on the record in a couple songs, and I like that you mentioned Tough Luck Kid. Like I wrote down a couple lines that stood out in that
Mhm.
song. I hope you don't think like me or see the bad things that I see, right? Like we
Right.
we try as parents to like, you know show our kids everything that they need to know in the world, but also like shelter them from the things that we know are out there that can harm them, and not just like the external stuff, but even the internal stuff, like
Right.
um how do we do that? And so but you also talked about like trying to be present, trying to be patient, and so are those kind of things that you've had to like really work on specifically, or has it just been like naturally you've adapted?
When I was teaching the first school I worked at, I worked there for many years. I was working with a lot of kids with behavior issues. It was like a
Okay.
very high poverty school. We had a lot of special education students that were like struggling at their home school, and they were coming to this specific school to like try another way, right? Where we had
Yeah.
an extra teacher in the classroom, and we were doing these point sheets to track their behavior from the moment they got there to the moment they left, to really keep the parents informed about what was going on and how they were interacting in the classroom. And so I have a lot of good patience and a lot of understanding about behavior issues from that experience. Um, but it's different when it's your own kid.
Totally.
I feel like my God, I am so soft with him. Like I'm the pushover, and my wife is very much, she's a teacher as well, and she's still teaching. She's very much the disciplinarian, and she's like very strong about all this stuff. And she gets on me sometimes if I'm being a little too, all right, I'm getting them too hyper before bedtime, or I'm, doing whatever I'm doing. Or if I, forgot something in the behavior play, you know what I mean? Like we've got like a sticker chart for him for like
Yep.
things to like, we're like doing the full blown, like, because one of our worst fears as an ex-teacher and my wife being a teacher is like, we're going to send our kid to school and he's pretty hyperactive and he's very sassy and he's got his tantrums, and he's going to be the bad kid in the classroom. That's like causing a lot of problems and giving the teacher grief and making their life hard. And it's like, that's like my wife's worst nightmare and it's one of mine. But yeah, so I think our patients, I think the one thing we could actually work on is saying, hey, some of this stuff is developmentally appropriate because he's not even 3 years old yet, and
Yeah.
I think that's the thing that like we have to remind ourselves that it's like, okay, he may have tried to bite a kid at daycare yesterday, but he's been bitten like 5 times.
Yeah.
So, he didn't actually get contact.
Yeah.
So is that a win? I don't know. It all feels crazy and it still feels so new that like, it just, yeah,
Well, it's
it's been
interesting.
an experience.
Interesting, like two people who are so, like you said, like come from a professional background of kind of knowing how to manage children, that it's just
Right.
like it's a different ball game when it's your own
Right.
child, right? And it's so hard to not make that mental leap to like, oh, my 2 year old or my 3 year old or my 6 year old or my 10 year old is doing this thing, and like, okay, they're gonna be like living in my basement for the rest of their life and struggling, and like it's hard
Right.
not to make that mental leap and let your
Right.
um your own hangups and your anxieties
Right.
about that stuff kind of creep in. But yeah, but like how do you know, like how do you know what's normal, because is sort of different for everybody, right? Like that's the thing.
Right.
And so that's, I don't know, that maybe that's where that like patience comes in to like,
Right. And every child is different and every family is different. And
yeah,
it's like you can, and that's, something you learn very easily being a teacher is, they have this set of standards and these ways they're supposed to test and how they're supposed to learn. And they're tracking all this data based on yada, yada, yada. But like once you get in a classroom with kids, they all have different learning styles and they need different levels of support. And like it's not just a one size fits all thing for everyone. And like the same things very much appears to be true for childcare. Because I think if we approached Henry, my son, with some of the relaxed ways, some of my friends' parents with their own children, like it would be an absolute nightmare for
yeah,
us. But like they're able to do that with their kid because their kid is chill in those situations and, can skip a nap or whatever it is, or can push their bedtime way late and it's not a big deal. But, yeah, it's definitely like they're like snowflakes, it seems, like
Totally. Yeah,
everybody's
I
new.
totally agree with you. Like, um, and that's like I said to you before we started, like we're not an advice podcast. I think
Right.
that's probably kind of why. Like, I guess, I've picked up things as I've talked to different people and like, oh yeah, I should try that, or that seems like that might work for me, or I don't really like
Right.
that, or whatever. But I think it's because like every kid's different, every family's different, and sort of what you can tolerate as a parent or what you need to be comfortable and successful and chill and like whatever it is that you need, that might be different too. Like, a family that has more relaxed rules, like I don't know, we have some friends like that too. And I think like I'm not sure if that's as much the kid in some of those cases as it is the parents. Like they can tolerate way more fucking chaos than I can
Right.
tolerate. Like I just need things to be, a
Right.
little bit sort of like routine and regimented for me to be able to get through the day too, right? So how do you balance that? Because now I'm like kind of pushing. So it's funny. Like I know you kind of mentioned right off the bat, like anxiety and stuff like that. Like I deal with some of that too.
Yeah.
And I know that like some of that like routine and wanting things to be regimented and predictable and whatever, that like that's me. And I'm like, geez, am I putting that hang up on my kids now? Like, am I training them to be like that? Because
Right.
yeah,
It's
that's like
not okay. I've been dealing with anxiety forever. I do think it's a double-edged sword where like I am prepared for things.
yeah,
I have thought through every possible negative and positive outcome and how things could go and what I might need and yada yada yada. So I feel like there's good that comes with my anxiety, but there's
yeah.
also the, oh, I worried about all this stuff absolutely unnecessarily. And I was up last night thinking about this when I should have been sleeping. You know what I mean? Like, so I've tried to at least recognize like the positive thing it does for me and like preparing me for things. And I'm not blindsided when something happens because I go, yeah, well, I thought about that and 97 other things that could have gone wrong today. But,
Yeah.
it's at least one positive aspect of it for me.
Totally. Yeah, I totally agree. Like,
Yeah.
that sort of default mode for me of like wanting to plan everything, that does work out well for me, for my
Yeah.
family in lots of different situations, but in other times it
Right.
creates stress too. But it's interesting, like your son's two, just about three. You're probably not quite at this stage yet, but one thing so I have two daughters, one's six, Nora, and
Okay.
one's nine, Elise. And what I've kind of started to find, especially with Elise, my older daughter, is I can kind of start to talk to her about some of those things. And I'm
Hmm.
not like, oh yeah, dad has anxiety and like I don't put it
Right.
that way, but I might be like, I know I was like pretty stressed about getting out of the house on time. Sorry about that. Like that
Right.
it wasn't important for us to be out of the house at that time. Like there was no real
Yeah.
reason we needed to. So sorry that I kind of overreacted there. And so sometimes I find that's helpful too as my kids are getting older. I'm like,
Yeah.
I can kind of like when I catch myself modeling the behavior I don't want them to see, I can kind of like explain it to them a little bit. So, I tell you that as maybe a bit of like a crystal ball for you that like that's something that kind of, works for me is talking to my
Right.
kids about it because I definitely start to see it in my kids too that like they pick
I,
up
I've
certain
I've
things.
tried to do that with Henry. I don't know if he
Yeah.
necessarily understood. There may have been a couple instances where I've like raised my voice at him,
Yeah.
or something when he's, really going on one. And I feel such immense guilt about that when I do that
Totally.
because I don't want to show him that that's how you solve your problems, right? Like I feel like it's not a great example, but sometimes when you're in the heat of the moment, it's hard. Like this is stressful and it can be really overwhelming. But I've said like, I apologize to him and I'm like, I'm sorry I raised my voice and I give him a hug and like we get past it. And I don't know if that made sense to him at the time, but like it made me feel better. And I feel like that's
Yeah.
something I'm going to continue to do. And hopefully he'll be able to understand it more, as he gets older. But yeah,
Well, they're going to go through that stuff too, right? Like they're going to overreact and they're going to freak out and they're going to do stuff they regret too. And so
right.
I do, you're like preaching to the choir here for me. Like
Yeah.
one of the things that I've struggled with as a parent, probably my biggest struggle as a parent is like, and sorry, now I'm making this about me, but
Do it.
is like my sort of stress or anxiety will kind of manifest as like anger.
Mhm.
I'll just like, it gets so bad that I kind of sort of need to walk away. Or it's not like a problem around our house, but it has come up a couple times. Same thing where I've
Right.
like raised my voice or I've yelled at the kids or whatever. And there's like no worse feeling in the
Yeah.
world than when you do that and you see them actually look scared, right?
Right.
Like that's the part that I sort of,
Heartbreaking.
yeah, it's totally
Yeah.
heartbreaking and you just feel like I've totally failed as a parent. Like how that's the one thing I want them to
Yeah.
feel is safe around me. If
Right.
nothing else, if I can't provide for them financially or whatever, I at least want them to know I love them and they're safe with me, right? And so in
Right.
those moments, you kind of jeopardize those things a little bit. And and so I can't really remember where I was going with this, but like I think that's the thing that I've had to explain to them a little bit too, like, hey daddy, like that is not what I said, that's not how I
Right.
really feel, like sometimes I just get really angry or I worked up and it's not your fault. And you kind of like try and rationalize. It almost feels silly to talk to your kids about that stuff, but
Right.
but I think they here's what I was going to say, but I do think they need to, like, you need to model that to them too, that like y- you don't have to be perfect all the time
Right.
and we're all going to screw up and um like sometimes you just need to say I'm sorry and move on. uh
Right. And
I don't know.
I don't know if I got a lot of that from my parents. I think that's like a newer thing,
Yeah,
right? Like 'cause I feel like you grow up and you think your parents have it all figured out and they know everything, and that was sort of the conception of like what we all sort of believe, like at least that's what I believed of my parents, at least while they were still together. It was like, oh yeah, they're flawless. They know everything. They're the gods of everything in my life, right? And then you get older and you realize it's like, oh, they still don't even have everything figured out. And it's okay that maybe I don't either. You know what I mean? So I think there's something weirdly comforting in that for me. That's like we're all just, trying to learn and grow. And if we're trying to learn and grow and be a better person, then we're on the right path.
yeah, totally. I mean, like you talked about like the patience and stuff like that, but like um maybe maybe let me ask you this, like were you worried? Did you have fears about becoming a parent? Like, um, and then maybe to take that one step further, like, did that change after having a child? Like, how did that, I guess, how did you kind of navigate that? I guess, everybody to some degree has some uncertainties around being a parent,
Right.
but I mean, you talk about like on the record. So I see now we're bringing the record in, which is great. So you've got a new record coming out, Kind of Rips, which is coming out
Yeah.
this Friday. And we've talked about Tough Luck Kid, and you kind of talk about um, um, kind of that fear of bringing your child into the world, and everything that's going on in the world.
Right.
Is that selfish to bring a child into this world? I mean, I know I have some of those feelings. Like,
Yeah.
was some of that swirling around as you were?
Oh, absolutely. But I also knew there was like some weird compulsion in me that I really wanted to do it.
Yeah,
I was previously married, and that was one of the things. It was like I started wanting to have a child, and my ex didn't, and that sort of was like kind of a sticking point with me. That's why I ended up remarrying, and I was 40 when my son was born, so I'm a bit of an old dad, but I had a lot of fear. I feel like I'm an empathetic person. I'm hyper aware of, I'm probably too aware of all the bad things that are going on in the world because, I really try to pay attention to that stuff. And that's why there's, a lot of political songs on our albums because,
yeah,
there's a lot of horrible injustices happening in the world, right? So being aware of those things and bringing a child into the world is like, how do I protect him from this? What kind of future is my son going to have if, there's no opportunity left in America? We're just billionaires are gobbling up every resource, hoarding every bit of wealth, pulling up the ladder and taking away opportunity. There's all this big story about the American dream and go to college and get a job and raise a family. Like I had to quit teaching because my wife and I's salaries combined wasn't enough to pay for a small house and pay for daycare. like it was not going to be economically viable for us to continue, for me to continue teaching. So I had to leave the profession, which I found very fulfilling. Obviously, it has its downsides, especially the Florida education system is in bad shape right now. But I had to leave a career that I felt was fulfilling to go chase more money so that we could afford to raise one child. And, we've talked about having a second, and we've had to sort of plan around, well, when Henry's out of daycare, then it would be possible. And then I'm going to be even older. But, it is what it is. Like, we can't afford two daycare bills. Like, that would, we'd be eating ramen noodles every day. And, we're trying to we would just be struggling a lot more. So it's just, it's scary to think that he's going to grow up in a world that seems to be becoming more hateful and intolerant. Like it felt like we were making really good progress on certain things, and it's all coming back the other way, like the pendulum swinging, and it feels like life is getting harder and more expensive, and just the struggle, and people are unhappy, and you wonder why people are depressed or anxious. It's like you're living in a or we're living in an economic system in a country that is like crushing us, right? Like it's not good here anymore. Like,
Yeah.
so, yeah, it's a pretty scary thing, but I also just reconciled with myself. It's like, you know what? This is something I want. I'm going to try my best to do a good job, and I'm going to try my best to insulate him from whatever I can for as long as I can, um, there's another song on the record. It's called Any Last Words, and it's about my fear of dying, and not just specifically like, oh, I'm scared I'll be dead. It's like I'm so scared of like something happening to me, and like me leaving my family in a bad spot where I'm not there to take care of them or provide for them or any of those things, right? Um, and that was sort of a new feeling that I had to reconcile with after I had a kid, where it was like, oh God, like I'm really responsible for this, and I need to take good care of myself. Otherwise, like, so it's a lot of pressure, but I sort of knew what I was getting myself into. But yeah, I do put a lot of pressure on myself to try to, like I said, like insulate him from the bad stuff, as much as I can, anyways, for as long.
Yeah, you say in any last words, you say, I hope you've got the things you need, right? And
Right.
and that's what we're trying to do as parents is, set you
Right.
up for success, like give you the tools that you need, and
Mhm.
hopefully we're around long enough to kind of see our kids succeed. But
Right. How to be a good person,
yeah,
how to navigate life, right? And I'm not going to hopefully put a bunch of debt like that you guys have
yeah,
to deal, you know what I mean? Like that, like financial security, like that's a huge thing too. Like it's like I said, it's getting harder here by the day, economically too. So it's like, that's something that I worry about, like, oh, if I get sick, like I'm not going to put our family, I'm not going to bankrupt our family, going to get all this expensive treatment, like you guys don't have to worry about that up in Canada. Lucky ducks.
yeah. Well, we'll see how long that lasts. Like there's definitely
Right.
a push to move things in the other direction too. I was mentioning, where we are here in Alberta. It's like it's crazy, right? And our
Yeah.
system's not perfect. And we can divert to
Right.
healthcare quickly, but yeah, our system's not perfect.
I
But at
know.
least, if the shit hits the fan, like you're gonna see a doctor,
Yeah.
and you're not it's not
Yeah.
gonna cripple you financially. And to me, it's like, yeah, we have long wait times to like get certain procedures done and things like that. But to me, that seems like a totally reasonable trade-off, because the idea that someone would not, get cancer treatment or, get a surgery they need because they can't afford it, like that seems just absolutely crazy to me. Like why would anyone want the system to be any different? Like why would you
Right.
want a system where people can't afford it? It's crazy.
Right. Well, it's, people lining their pockets, and
Yeah,
you'd think that with all of our competition here that we would have great service and great healthcare, but like our wait times to see specialists and for procedures are incredibly long as well. So like it's privatizing it is not a solution, like it's a solution for the people that are going to make the money off of it. But like, especially with the health insurance down here, it's like all you're doing is putting middlemen in the way of you getting your
totally.
health care. It's it's just sucking away the funds that could be used to care for people, and pay the doctors that are doing all this incredible work. Like it's just, I don't know. It's insane.
Totally. And it inflates the prices, right? Like
Right.
because you've added all these middlemen in, it inflates the
Hmm.
prices. But okay, so to go back to kind of the parenting thing, I mean, so these are the like practical things you're thinking of as a parent, right? Like, okay, are we going to be financially able to handle this? Are they going to have a good school to go to? Are they going to be able to have healthcare? Am I going to be okay? Like, all these things. So once you have Henry, like, does some of your thinking around that change? Like what changes?
I feel like the first year I was just in survival mode.
Yeah.
Like it was just like, this is all so new, right? This is all so like, I had never changed a diaper before until I was in the hospital, right? And my wife had an issue with her epidural where she got this really bad puncture headache. And so she was like out of commission. They had her on some painkillers to try to like help her feel better. And someone comes in and they need me to change the diaper. And I'm like having a panic attack. Like I don't know what I'm
Yeah.
doing at all. So that, and the feedings every 2 hours at the beginning and all that, like it was all like really like, I don't know how to do this. Right. But yeah, I think as he's gotten older, I'm starting to think about more of him becoming a person, because before he's walking, before he can talk or like really express his needs, like he's just sort of like a blob,
Yep.
like he's there and he's cute and like look at his little toes and like, oh, he pooped again, it's
Yep.
but as he's gotten older, like I feel like my connection to him is growing like exponentially. And I feel like I'm seeing him more as a person. And then it's like, my God, he's going to be a capable person one day. Because you see him start doing things for himself, and you're like, okay, okay, maybe we're going to be okay. You know what I mean? I did start feeling somehow better about all of it. Despite all the challenges we're still facing, it's like, um, yeah, he's a little dude, and he's gonna be a guy someday. You know what I mean? And if I set him up right, he'll probably be all right. Like if I do my job and my wife does her job and we do our best, he's going to be all right. And I really do feel that despite I don't know, my brain telling me otherwise sometimes, but it's one of those like intrusive thoughts things where like, with my depression comes like self-esteem issues about my ability to
Yeah.
do anything, right? Like I'm so critical of myself, not just as a parent, but like about songwriting, about this, about my job, like, just everything. Like it's really, my brain like makes it really easy for me to get sort of down on myself and like sort of in a hole about things. You know what I mean? So yeah, just trying to avoid that as much as possible,
Yeah.
especially and not let Henry see that side of me. You know what I mean? And I'm really good about like when I'm feeling depressed, I I'm pretty good at hiding it while he's awake and everything. But like and I think that's because I did a good job of hiding it for a long time in my life. It wasn't really until I started this band that I started being like really acknowledging it and then writing songs about like my own sort of mental health struggles, right? Like, and I think before that, I just pretended everything's fine and I'm fine. And, I did a whole lot of that for a whole lot of years, right?
Yeah.
Because there's so much, I guess, stigma attached to it. So
Is
yeah.
it therapeutic for you to write about it, to be open about it?
Oh, absolutely. And I used to talk about it a lot more at our shows. I started feeling like a broken record a little bit. There was like a certain song we would play where it's like, this is about this and blah, blah, blah. And, I went to therapy and it really helped. And if you can afford therapy, you should really try it out. If you've even been thinking about it, go check it, and sort of encouraging people to do that. And I had people reach out to me a bunch of times being like, yo, I'm gonna go see a therapist. Like, like hearing you talk about that was cool, and it sort of pushed me that extra bit I needed, like so like being able to do that felt really good. And that's sort of why I sort of continue to write songs and try to be as open and honest about my feelings as possible. Because when you hear someone talking about something that you connect with, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't know, like, especially if it's something like depression, it helps you sort of not feel alone, right? You're like, okay,
Totally.
this is normal. Other people feel this way. Like it's it's something that we can deal with, right? Like, so yeah, I feel like I used to talk about it more at shows, but like I said, I started feeling like a broken record. I was going to change it up. And now Burns just makes weird jokes between our songs half the time. But he's a pretty funny guy. So I like
Totally.
it. Bring some levity to the fact that like our songs are so damn serious all the time, right? So like,
Yeah.
I think it's a nice juxtaposition actually.
But it's funny that you say that because that's like one thing that I notice even about your music. Um, there's a lot of serious topics, and I think like most of the songs are at their foundation pretty serious, but there's some humor that's kind of, brought into the music, whether it's like in the wordplay or it's,
Yeah.
like at which song is it at the end of Tough Luck Kid? Yeah. Like you have the Price is Right trombone at the end of,
Right.
and it's
We're
like,
trying to
well,
figure out a way to do that live. Like we got to get like a sample of it or something.
yeah. And so that's funny, right? But it's almost like, when you're so wrapped up in that serious stuff, like, watching the news, your life as a parent is hard, your job is hard. Like when you start really thinking about that, like it's like if you can't bring some humor, bring some community into it, like you just how can you possibly cope? And so it's interesting to me, like what you were just talking about, that um talking openly about it, what it does is it creates a community. Like, and maybe it's
Right.
just one person or it's two people or it's, 100 people that were at your show that identified with that. But I think it does do that. And like, it really makes me think of, I actually talked about it on the show, but it was a couple years ago. So I'll share this story again. It just made me think of it. I was at this barbecue. It was like a bunch of my buddies that had come up from different cities and stuff. We were having this barbecue, and we kind of got talking, me and one of my friends, and I think I said something like, "Oh yeah, I started taking Cipralex." So I think that's called Lexapro in the States. I was
Hmm.
like, I started taking Cipralex, and like it's made a huge difference for me. It's been so good. Like, and that actually, I kind of went and talked to my doctor. This was after my second daughter was born. And I
Hmm.
just started to realize like, geez, I'm really stressed. I'm not coping well. And so I went and did it, and it made a huge difference for me. And I was talking to one of my friends. He's like, no way. I take that too. I'm like,
Yeah.
what? Really? And then like a couple other guys were around and they were like, oh yeah, I take this. And like one of the other guys was like, oh geez, like I've been really struggling. He just had a baby. He's like, I've been really struggling. Like maybe I should talk to my doctor. And you
Right.
start to realize like we're all out here suffering in our own heads, and to different degrees, right? Like not
Right.
everybody deals with the same thing, but we suffer. And then one of the toughest parts about it, about depression and anxiety, it makes you feel alone, like you're the
Yeah.
only person. Like everybody else when I look out there is dealing with their life totally fine, and why can't I just get my shit together? And so
Right.
you get all this like kind of negative self-talk, and then once you create that community and start opening up about it, you start to realize like, geez, I'm not alone. Right. And so
Yeah.
it's neat to hear you talk about that. And it's neat. Like to me, I think it's such an important thing to be open about. Not everybody's able to do it. And not everybody, it's not therapeutic for everybody.
Hmm.
Um, but I think it's important because I think, just like we were talking about with this show, it's like some people just don't have that community. And so they need to hear that. And that might be the thing that helps click that thing in their brain that says, you know what, hey, I'm not alone. This is something I can deal with.
Right. Yeah, I actually just started taking antidepressants myself because I had been feeling really overwhelmed and, like there's a lot going on. And, I sort of started feeling those feelings creeping back. And, my wife sort of pointed out, she's like, you've seemed really down a lot more often lately. And I was always kind of resistant to going the medication route. And I spent a few years in therapy and I felt like I learned a lot of tools to sort of deal with this stuff. But, therapy is really expensive here.
Yeah.
Especially I don't have great insurance. So it's like, I'd be spending hundreds of dollars a month that like we can't really afford right now. So it's like, and I was also always concerned, like, oh, what if this changes the parts of my personality that I like, right? What if this takes away my creativity or like, I don't know. So I was just always like kind of hesitant about it, but I started taking them about a week ago, and the
Oh,
jury's
interesting.
out because it's going to take some while to build up in my system and all that stuff. But I was finally like, you know what, this is something I'm going to try. And if it makes life better and easier, and then that's a good thing for me, and it's a great thing for my family. So yeah, we'll see how it goes. But yeah.
I was super resistant too, and I work in healthcare. I'm a pharmacist by trade, so
Oh,
like
really?
and I was always super resistant to that idea as well. Which is kind of funny in a way, but like my own personal experience, I'm not saying you're going to have the same experience as me, but it was like night and day for me.
Yeah.
Like it took a couple weeks, and I started to realize, geez, like this is something that would have just like totally sent me off the deep end here, and I'm coping with it. Like it's tough.
Mm.
Like I found with the kids, that was like a thing that created just a ton of additional stress in my life. I'm already stressed out about everything else. And then,
Right.
the kids are so unpredictable, right?
Mm.
It just it took the edge off to be able to just like take a breath and like, okay, we can deal with this. Like, yeah, you
Right.
had an accident in your car seat, like no big deal. Like, we'll deal with that. Or like,
Right.
you're not going to bed, like no big deal. We can deal with that, right? But
Right.
those are the things that like, can be kind of the straw that breaks the camel's back sometimes. So,
Yeah. I definitely am like prone to like catastrophic thinking and spiraling when things start going wrong, right? So like
yep.
if it can keep me from like if it'll just even me out a little bit, right? That'd be really nice. Just like take the edge off here and there and make sure that, I'm not spiraling too much or, getting too down about something. That's not a big deal. Like one of the things my therapist told me that like I remind myself about all the time is she'd say, "So what?" Right? I'd be talking about something that I was worried about, and I was like, "This is coming up, and I'm really stressed about it. And what if this happens? And what if that happens?" And she goes, "So what? What are you going to do next?" And then I would think through what I would do next, and I would be like, "Okay." And then she's like, "Then what?" I'm like, "Okay." And then all of a sudden, I had sort of walked myself out of whatever that disaster that I was unnecessarily living in that hadn't happened yet.
Yeah.
And it's been the most, those two words has been like the most helpful thing for when I'm very aware of like where my brain is headed. Like if I feel it going that way, it's like, so what? So what? And I think that was wildly helpful to me for some reason.
Yeah. So simple, right?
Yeah.
Makes so much sense. Like just,
Yeah.
so what? So
Yeah.
this thing happens that you're worried about. So what?
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Oh, that's really cool. I like that.
Life goes on. You'll figure out a way out of it, and it's crazy, but yeah, it's true.
And I think like, what we're talking about really is like taking care of yourself, right? And that's something that comes up a lot on this show, and something I think, you know, we sort of, as Rad Dads Edmonton, we sort of really want to champion. Like, how do you put, like, yes, we all want to put our kids first, but I think you got to take care of dad too, right? And so I'm curious, like in your, we've talked about kind of some of the mental health stuff. You talked about therapy and medications, and thanks, for being open about that stuff too.
Yeah.
I appreciate it, and it's helpful for me to hear sometimes too. Like I'm not alone with
Yeah.
that. Um, are there other ways you kind of like take care of yourself, or make sure you've kind of got what you need in place to be a good dad,
I
to be
think
a good
something I
bandmate, be a good husband?
Yeah, I think something I learned is that I need music. I need like a creative outlet. I feel like when I neglect that part of myself, I start to get irritable. I start to feel really stagnant. And I think that can sort of trigger some of my depression because I feel like I'm stuck in this routine of getting up, working. You get your 2 days off on the weekend, and we're just slowly dying. And like that's what my brain starts thinking about. It's like, but doing music as an outlet to be creative, to get out with my buddies and play one night a week for practice, and then go out of town and do some shows. We're not playing a ton of shows. Like Burns has two kids, as you know, and I've got mine. So we're trying to be strategic about like weekenders and flying out to do a festival when we can and stuff like that. But I need that stuff to like recharge that other part of myself. Otherwise, I feel kind of unbalanced as a person, right? Like I feel like I'm leaning too far into like, I don't know, regular life and music has always been sort of like my creative outlet, my escape, my excuse to go see places, to go travel, right? Like, which I think being able to travel and play music has been one of the things that like really opened my mind about the rest of the world, right? And how we're all very much the same,
Yeah,
like we're just living within different borders under different laws, kind of, but like, my God, like it's just like people are people. Like, why
totally.
are we so insane to each other sometimes?
Totally. It's cool that you say that like, that creative outlet is therapeutic for you. It's something that you need, right? And so that I mean that's a great segue into let's talk about the new record. So we've
Okay.
talked about a couple of the songs already, right? We talked about Tough Luck Kid and Any Last Words. Those kind of have that direct parenting kind of connection there, to your son. What else can people expect from the new record? It's kind of rips. It's out April 4th. You guys just had your record release show over this past weekend, right? So we're
Yeah.
we're talking on April 1st. So when people hear this, the record will have just come out. So yeah,
Okay,
tell
cool.
us what, if they haven't listened to it yet, what can they expect?
There's some political songs. There's some songs about, there's a song, probably the first one of the first songs we put out is about sort of how the human race is kind of heading in the wrong direction. And it feels like things are heading towards a collapse a little bit. Like we're doing things to this planet that are like not sustainable. We're letting people that aren't going to be affected by the laws they're putting in make decisions for us that like, it's like you're going to be dead in 10 years and you're making decisions that are going to destroy this planet in 50, right? Like, so there's songs about that. There's political stuff. There's catchy stuff. There's slow songs. There's faster songs. I don't know. Like, I feel like it's our catchiest record we've made. Um, I hope so, anyways. But I feel like it's diverse. I feel like between the songs, there's a lot of audio clips that maybe bring a little levity, like we were talking
Yeah,
about, to the process. And I really think it's a record that, like, if you listen to it from the front to the back, like it's best enjoyed that way, which I know
yeah,
is not like the way people listen to music very much anymore. But yeah, I don't know. It's fun. I don't know. We think it's cool. We think it kind of rips.
yeah,
We hope people do too. But ultimately, like this is something that we very much do for ourselves to scratch our own itch. And if people like it, that's awesome, And if we get opportunities to do cool stuff because of it, that's awesome. But if we're just going to go and play in front of 50 people in Orlando once a month, that's cool too.
yeah,
Like like I'm grateful. Like I'm 43, right? And I've been playing in bands, playing shows for 28 years now, which is insane to think about. I did that math the other day. I was like, oh my God, I'm approaching 30 years of doing this. And so many people I know that play music have sort of fallen off and aren't really involved in it anymore. And sometimes when I talk to them, they're like, oh man, I miss it. Like I miss being able to do stuff. And it's hard to get back going once you quit. So
yeah,
I'm just grateful to still be doing it. And I feel like it's a challenge to me. Like I feel like um, writing this record, I feel like it's the best songs I've written. Um, and I feel like that should be your goal always, like to always be constantly improving. So this is like kind of my life's work. And it's like a way to, I don't know. I really like the idea that there's a couple songs in this record that maybe, 20 years from now, Henry, my son, will listen to and be like, man, my dad really cared about me and like was really concerned about like that, you know what I mean? And
yeah,
there's this documentation of it somewhere that, could possibly outlive me. So like, I don't know. I feel like it's like a statement of where we are in the world today. It's a statement of where I am in the world today
yeah,
as a person. Um, and I think the songs are cool. We had a lot of fun making it. It was probably the most collaborative record we ever made, where like I would bring less sort of finished songs or like finished ideas and be like, I got a verse and a chorus. Like, what are we going to do with this? And try to hash some stuff out that way. I really tried to, when we bring songs and if someone's like not feeling a specific part, it's like, let's try to fix that part or come up with a different idea. And if we couldn't, it's like, all right, goodbye, like move on to the next one. You know what I mean? There's more ideas coming. Like, it's fine. Like, and it really sort of tossed anything that not everybody was stoked on. You know what I mean? So like it's been a cool process. I think the artwork's really cool.
Yeah.
I think the record came out looking really cool. And yeah, it's just exciting to still be able to do this. Yeah, I don't know. It's crazy. Like I said, 28 years. It's nuts. I'm old.
Yeah, but it's your therapy, right? Like we were talking about,
Right.
and that's what I like about your band too, is like all the songs feel like, people's songwriting styles are always, a little bit different. I feel
Mm,
like what I love about your band is that the songs are so like kind of like hard on your sleeve.
mm.
Like this is exactly how I'm feeling. There, not that there's no no depth to them or something. I don't mean to imply that, but like it's so relatable because like,
Yeah,
yeah, this is
I don't
exactly what
hide
I'm
behind
feeling.
metaphors. Like
Yeah.
I'm not going to bring you any flowery language and hide what I'm trying to say. Like I'm very blunt with my lyrics, and that's kind of intentional where it's like,
Yeah.
okay, if you're dealing with serious shit, like let's talk about it like black and white. Like let's go. You know what I mean? But yeah, yeah, I appreciate
Totally.
that.
And yeah, and so that's something that really resonates with me. And I think, with people that like your band, that's why it's easy to kind of like see yourself in those songs. It's easy to, you're not like searching for the meaning in the song.
Right.
And so it's easy to kind of grab onto. I love the flow of the record too. Like just like you said, like you can tell that's thoughtful how it flows together. I still listen to music that way. I kind of hate the, single culture or whatever,
Yeah.
but I'm old too. I'm, 40 as well. And so I remember the good old days of like, albums, being very carefully sequenced. And
Right.
so I appreciate that, and I like there's a band I really love is Dillinger 4, and I feel like
Mhm.
I get, to me, you guys are like not derivative of Dillinger 4, but like is that's what I hear when I'm listening to you
Yeah.
guys. I'm like, oh, is this like a great Dillinger 4 record? And the audio clips in between, it just kind of brings everything together. If people out there listening or watching haven't heard the record yet, go check it out. It's kind of rips. Where can they find it?
Smart Punk Records, and then in Canada, People of Punk Rock is distributing it up there. So yeah. So
Okay.
those are the places. I think there's a UK, or I don't know. I'm sorry. I should be better at this. I'm bad at promoting.
We'll put up links to everything, so
Okay.
anyone that's listening or watching can just click on our link tree and find it. It's been awesome talking to you. Congratulations on the new record.
Yes, ma'am.
I love that, it's obviously it's got that, piece of your family in it too. And I think it is something that Henry's going to look back on and enjoy seeing himself in the record too. So that's really neat. Any words of wisdom for dads out there listening? Maybe new dads, you've kind of got that, you're 2, 3 years in. What's a pearl you can leave behind?
Um, j- do your best. Be present, try to pay attention, maybe don't read too much information on the internet. I feel like I made that mistake trying to read about things on the internet, and you'll read one article saying this is the best thing to do, and another one two lines down that says that is the worst thing you could possibly do. And I think there's a lot of kind of bogus disinformation out there based around parenting, or like very just kind of subjective information
Yeah.
that's presented as fact. And like we said earlier, like every child is different. Like be you, let your child be you, like do what works for you and your family, just really show up and, be there.